I believe in the words of Frederick Douglass, that without struggle there is no progress. Bring on the struggle. Let us take it on together to make some change, because change is always coming, but it's not necessarily good change unless we're struggling together. I'm happy to be able to bring this book to you. My regret is that it costs so damn much money. I'm not Danielle Steele or Michael Crichton. I think you figured that out already. I'm not writing books to get rich quick. If I did, I could tell you I'm an utter failure. But I wrote this book to find you. And as I sat there at the table and everybody was here together in this room, I thought, look, we're looking for each other. We're looking for the flag snapping in the wind. We're listening to the, well, I don't want to say listening. I'm trying to get rid of any ableist language in my talk. If you hear me say something, I'll change it. We're trying to find ways to connect with each other, I believe. And we have complicated lives. We don't just have one struggle. Many of us are carrying many, many burdens of economic and social oppression. And so to come to a place where we're celebrating our difference instead of trying to subsume the difference. You know, those who say they're for unity, but just only the things that relate to me, leave the rest of who you are out the door, or you're being disunifying. You know, thanks a lot. You know, it's a one demand. If we don't all agree, you can walk out the door. That's not unity. That's just a single issue movement in which bosses and workers can all agree. But the fact is that I came of age in consciousness in the factories in Buffalo in which I cut my teeth on the political truth that an injury to one is an injury to all. And that when we had a strike coming up, we had to put all of our grievances together. And then all of us agree that we were going to fight for each other's grievances as though they were our own. And the bigger the list of grievances, the stronger we were. Because the more everyone who looked at that list of grievances on the shop floor knew that this strike was going to defend their lives as well. And that's the kind of unity that I want to see. Now, I know how many times people come from the States and in very subtle ways and in very not so subtle ways display a great deal of arrogance and chauvinism. Coming here as though the United States is the center of everything, or they're coming to teach, or whatever. I am coming here and giving great thought to what is appropriate for me to speak with you about today, with the kind of humility which to me means teachability, that is open to coming here to learning about what is going on in your struggles and your communities and what the issues are here domestically, so that it will enrich my own understanding and I can take it back and help find ways together with you to build solidarity, to build bonds of unity across this border that should not be there, let alone be militarized, so that we can build a powerful movement together and extend it around the world. And the one thing that I thought is, I'm not going to tell you all about what's going on in the U.S. I don't even know all of what's going on in the U.S. And I'm not going to talk to you about what's going on here. I'm going to listen to you about what's going on here. But I think one thing that does have great impact for us right now is something that Drag King Dreams is a fictional exploration of. And that is of women's lives, of queer lives, genderqueer lives, transsexual lives, and the lives of people of color, including immigrant workers, in a post-9/11 period of war and racist profiling and roundups of Asian, South Asian, and Arab and Muslim people. And how that relates to our lives and our struggles, how it relates to a group of third-shift genderqueer workers, it's okay, who are looking for ways to not only make a difference in the world, but to make a living, to pay the rent, to find health care, to get to and from their job safely on the subway. And I want to talk to you today just a little bit about the non-fiction reality of which this fictional work is based. Because I feel that this is something that our movements, not our movement, our movements, our communities, overlapping though they are distinct, many of them. How we can come together and talk about building a movement that's based on our own lives and our own aspirations for liberation, and not having the Globe and Mail or the New York Times define the movement for us. And first and foremost, I want to talk about this campaign to make it seem as though the greatest threat to queer lives, the greatest threat to women's lives, the greatest threat to lesbian lives is coming from Islam. And therefore, all of the progressive movements for sexual and gender and sexuality liberation should either get behind the so-called war on terror or disband and get out of the way. It first happened before the war against Afghanistan. I will never forget the chill I felt when I first heard Laura Bush on the radio intone the two words, women's liberation. Now you would think when Laura Bush says women's liberation, the movement would go the other way. But it didn't. It didn't. And I don't think there's anyone today who would argue that the Pentagon and the Canadian troops and all the NATO forces went in there and liberated the women of Afghanistan. No, the war against Afghanistan is not a liberal issue. It's an imperial issue. It was a war for conquest. How is it that leaders of second-wave feminism in the States could sign a full-page ad saying, "Go bomb Afghanistan. Liberate women on the tips of your bayonets," the very military in which women, GIs can't use the latrine at night, have to not drink water all day in the heat because they fear being raped within their own ranks and are fearful of going to their officers and reporting it. This is the army of women's liberation. How is it that so many leaders in the women's movement were duped into believing that this was a war for women's liberation? Don't we then need to re-examine and redefine for ourselves what women's liberation really means?